moving to the sort of the more of the headline topic of this article, Bob Arum talking about Terence Crawford going to South Africa and looking for a fight. Lance Pugmire writes, sure, Northern Ireland's Carl Frampton defeat Tyler McCreary on Saturday night in Las Vegas. Arum said he plans to take Frampton to Belfast for a spring opportunity to make to become a 3-division champion against WBO super featherweight title holder Jamel Herring. Love that fight. That makes great sense. Jamel Herring and Carl Frampton in Belfast, right, Gary? Like, makes perfect sense.
Great fight, yeah.
And then right now they're thinking about and South Africa. And shout out to Lance Pugmire for framing this. Like, legitimate shout out for this. In South Africa, maligned by an ongoing corruption and bribery scandal, reminding people right now that the former president is literally on trial for corruption and bribery from European arms manufacturers. Just want to point that out there. Just want to remind people what's happening in South Africa right now. Within its ruling African National Congress has sought to stem the negativity by staging a championship fight that would drive tourism and uplift the country's flagging confidence, Arum said. One option to fight there in 2020, Terence Crawford, should he win his mandatory defense against Agitas Kavalauskas at MSG. Wow. And then, I love this part. Cape Town is absolutely beautiful and gorgeous, with beautiful vineyards nearby. The people I'm talking to from this big company, aka corporation, who want the fight, want the world to see that again. It's just what's happening in Saudi Arabia with the Ruiz Joshua. It's what's happening with the UAE and Dubai with a lot of fights recently as well. It's an obvious country looking to get big-time sports to stem, as Lance Pugmire says, huge issues with the country in terms of corruption, public perception of the government, and on top of it, to show to the other world leaders in other countries that no, we're fine. We do things like you. We're not a corrupt institution right now, and it's in the same way that, like, in sports, like NFL games, you're going to see U.S. military there. It's a way to propagandize and say, hey, no, we're all good here. Jets flying by, where everyone's happy, everyone's safe. No corrupt institutions here, and that to me is another sign of a forced, international event that makes no sense to me. And so that's why, like, this article is so bittersweet to me, because at one level I see Bob Arum coming to light and saying, you know what, like, there's no reason that we should put these fights in Philly or these traditional markets that, let's say in the 80s or 70s, were the markets, right? Like, you put fights in Philly, you could sell well and make a living off of that. I think Russell Peltz talked about that in a recent article. That you could, back in the day, make tons of money off of just ticket sales in these Detroit, Chicago, Baltimore, Boston, New York. You start naming just markets and cities. Back in the 80s, 70s, they thrived. In modern boxing, that is so much more of an international sport. These markets aren't the natural markets for these names and these boxers anymore. So you have to put more international events on. But on the same hand, we have Bob Arum, I think, misunderstanding that issue and thinking that, oh, we're not making money here. Where can we find the most money for fights? And that, I think, is a very lazy way of promoting. Because then you end up putting a Terence Crawford in South Africa purely for money, because a corporation wants to help the government out, which sounds shady in and of itself, to sportswash a corruption case against the former president of the country. You have those instances instead of, let's say, a natural one, which would be Usyk or Loma or certain names in Eastern Europe, or let's say like Crawford in a country in Africa that doesn't have massive corruption trials at the moment. Maybe that'd be a great idea. Like, I think Nigeria is doing decent right now. Put in Nigeria. Like, there's certain ways to go about this that would be right, and Bob Arum is still missing the boat. That's the sad part. Like, he is so close to figuring it out, and he's not. And I feel like all these promoters just don't care. It's sad.
At Nigeria, I just thought of Ghana. Ghana's economy is pretty strong, right? And obviously, they love boxing.
Loves, I mean, Ghana boxing's storied and legendary. Let's be honest. Like, yeah, why not? If
Fact,
if Richard Comey wins against, let's say, Tifamo Lopez, and you want to put Loma, Richard Comey, and Ghana, like that would be cool.
yeah.
You know, that makes sense. I bet you can find a big site fee. It would make sense there. You could drive a market that does want the fight naturally. Um, 92Q. LOMO, when has boxing been about morals? Good point. But I think 92, this is beyond just morals. I think this is, what I'm talking about here is the version of promoting right now that we see is that promoters are looking for the biggest site fee. That's how we get, I think, a Jacobs Chavez fight in Arizona. That's how we get a Mulvane, Kansas fight. That's how we get certain casino fights in Indio, California, right? Because it's site fees, right?
Or Stevenson fighting for his first world title in Reno.
You know, that to me is a lazy way of promoting and is looking for short-term money. When the long-term play, I would say, is to build fighters in their natural markets, and then once they become superstars in those markets, then to try to take them outside that potentially for one-offs or the occasional fight. That's the method and the way to go about it. So guys like Usyk, Loma, like we said, Eastern Europe. Guys like Crawford, obviously they did the right way with Omaha. They built him in Omaha, Nebraska in a great way. And they've sort of given up on trying to make him a New York or LA star when they should be. That's what they should be doing next. Instead of then sidestepping that to go to a short-term site fee in South Africa. You know, Ramirez Postal. You have a Mexican-American fighter from Fresno, California, and a Ukrainian fighter fighting in China in a casino. You know, like to me, that is short-term promoting and just lazy promoting. And that's what I'm talking about. Not more so morals. I think that's a different aspect of this discussion potentially, and one that you're right. That like it's corporations and capitalism and promoters. Like that's never going to be about morality and ethics. But smart business, I think, could be an aspect that we talk about here. That this is not smart business. That this is short-term money grabs that does hurt the sport long term, or at least doesn't build, I think, fan bases the right way. And that's more of my issue here. And PSK, no. When Zaire and Philippines morally correct and fights happen there, no. Zaire had massive issues, obviously, and the Philippines to this day still have massive issues with Duarte. So no, PSK. I love these whataboutisms, though. It's okay. Don't be so triggered. Moving on, though. Gary, any other thoughts, though, on Crawford, South Africa? I mean, do we think that even happens? Do we think we get Crawford in South Africa next year?
I mean, I don't think so. I think Crawford's the wrong guy to sell in South Africa. I think, again, I don't know what they're offering him. If they offer enough money and it's career high money, maybe. But I mean, that depends on, how many zeros and how many commas. If they're offering Crawford $20 million to go fight in South Africa, I'll go to South Africa. Lewis fought Rockman in South Africa, didn't he?
Yes.
I mean, you can do it. I mean, if the money is right, I wouldn't rule it out. I just don't think Crawford's the personality that's going to. It would be Crawford versus who, right? They're not going to put Crawford versus.
No, Bob Arum doesn't care. He participated in apartheid South Africa. Like, think about that. Like, you were like, I think it was like 1979. He had a fight there as well. I forget what the fight was, but like that's apartheid. Like that's the heart of, and the prime, so to speak, of apartheid South Africa. Bob Arum didn't care then, and like you said, he worked in Zaire. He's worked in all these places. Like he doesn't care about working with warlords or dictators or autocrats. Like he doesn't care about that. No one cares in this industry. I will say this: Ludabella had a great way to phrase it, and I think you phrased it correctly. When the country you're promoting in is using your fight as a de facto, quote, welcome to the world, and an endorsement of itself as a wonderful place to live and visit, how do you make that distinction that you are not involved in the political process? I would review these situations on a case-by-case basis. Had I been around in apartheid, I promise you I would not have participated in a promotion in South Africa as Arum did in 1979. And he goes on to talk about Saudi Arabia and Khashoggi and stuff. But um, digressing. Again, I think that's the clear distinction we have to make here. Like, I know, like, for a lot of people, when I brought up the whole Ruiz Joshua being a sports washing event for Saudi Arabia, they said, what about America? America has systemic racism, has concentration camps at the border for Mexican migrants. Like, the list goes on and on about America is not great. You know, literally helping out in genocide against the Kurds and the genocide against the Yemeni people. But is the U.S. government using boxing as a de facto, as Ludabelle says, propaganda for the country in spite of those things? No, that's the clear distinction to make, I would say. That's why I think we can maybe have a more of a vitriolic response to certain countries using boxing for that nature, because they are intrinsically, literally using it as a commercial for the country in spite of atrocities. That doesn't happen necessarily in the UK, in the US, in Mexico, in France, in Germany. Like that's not a regular occurrence, unlike, let's say, Saudi Arabia or the UAE.
Seriously, if you want to make your country look good when it's doing terrible things, fake a moon landing like the U.S. did.
Yeah, come on, get on our level, for God's sake. And that in the height of the civil rights movement, we faked a moon landing. JK, that's not faked, by the way. JFK was assassinated by the CIA, though. That's a different topic for a different day.
That's a good one. We could do a trending now on that one.
I'm down for that. I'm always down for some weird trending now shows. You know me.